Okay, what I want to do here is I'm going to create a website from a basic template of HTML, and I'm going to be based on a simple basic wireframe that I created. So I'm going to show you how to add in the proper tags and set it up correctly on that part. Now the first thing you have to do is make sure you have HTML5 structure set in play. And this is what the HTML5 structure is going to look like. At the top, we determine what the doc type is, and that tells the browser what version of HTML we're using. And in this case, we're using HTML5. Then we have the HTML tag, which the browser right here will indicate that this is a web page. So it knows that anything that's in between the two tags, the HTML and the closing tag, that it's going to be information about the web page itself. In the head section, which always goes after the HTML tag, we'll have the title tag, and this title here will change based on what type of page you're creating. Excuse me. Now, if you're creating something like a contact page, you would probably change the description so that it will relate to that page. So it's kind of like describing the page. Then the meta tag here is used when you have to add in special characters like an ampersand in your text, or a quotation mark, or a lesson symbol. And so what you have to do is you have to actually specially insert these codes into your page to get the characters to come out correctly. If you don't, the browser doesn't know how to read it. So this is required in the head section. Now the key is, remember, nothing is going to go in the head section that you want to appear in the body of the page. All the content that you want to appear on your page has to go in the body section. Hence the reason we have the body tags set up right here. So all our content is going to go in between the opening and closing body tag. A lot of people will try to put some content up the head section. Some browsers will not be able to view that. So you have to put your content in the right area, and that in this case is the body tag itself. So we have this structure set up, and I'm ready to go to set up my my web page based on a wireframe that I have created. Now let me open up that wireframe that I'm going to kind of recreate on that part. So what I want to look here is, when you create your wireframe itself, I want you to kind of group it together in logical orders, and usually you put in labels such as header, navigation, footer, main content. That's going to be always helpful. This is a very simplistic wireframe. So what I'm doing here is I want you to count out how many sections we have on the page. So if we look at this, I have this section up here, darker green, 1, 2 for the navigation is going to eventually be here. I have a sidebar over here that's divided up into 2 sections. So the sidebar is 3, the top section is 4, and the bottom section is 5. Then we have the main section over here, which is 6, and then the footer is 7. So when you count that up, that indicates almost how many div tags you're going to have to use to group the area on your page in a logical order. We use div tags, and we also use in HTML5 we have a header tag, we have a footer tag that we can use as well. Right now I'm just going to be using div tags so we can get good control on understanding how div tags work, and div tags can just go in and they kind of group your page into a logical order, and then what you'll do is you'll add content to that area. So what I'm going to do here, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my body section, and I'm going to type in a div tag. Now the first div tag we always work with is what we call is the wrapper. So what we'll do is we'll type in div space, and we have to give it a specific name. We do that by using the ID attribute, and we follow that by a quotation mark and another quotation mark. And the wrapper, this is a proper syntax of typing in the ID attribute to a div tag. So notice the space in between. And in this case, I'm going to press my enter key a couple times. The closing div tag is going to go right before the closing body tag, down here at the bottom. The wrapper itself becomes our page. So our page will control settings such as the width of our page. We'll center our page in the browser. So the wrapper becomes the physical page itself. Now what happens is that all the other div tags that you add has to go inside the wrapper. So based on the screen, on the wireframe that I have, I'm going to add other div tags. So I'm going to say div ID, and again, remember, why are we using ID? When we apply a style in our style sheet, if we just say div and then we apply a style, it applies it to all div tags. So when we add the ID, we're making this a unique name. It's like your first name or your last name. So now we know who you are, and we can go into our style sheet and specifically format that section. So again, header, I'm going to give them a little more specific names on what they do, and I'm going to put the closing div tag here. Now I said we're going to have a total of about 7 div tags here. So what I want to do is I want to copy and paste the first one. I'm going to make sure it's typed in right. If you don't and you screw up on the first one, then the other ones, of course, it's going to be wrong as well. Now, what comes after my header? I'm just going to type in nav. Okay. Now we have our section that we're going to have 2 columns on. So if we look at the preview again, what's going to happen here is we have the nav section, and then we have a main section that's going to house these 2 columns. Column 1, column 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this main, and when I name the div tags, I want to keep it lowercase. Do not use spaces. Now header, the next one down, I'm going to say col1, col2. Again, no spaces. Now I'll worry about column 1 in a little bit. I'm just getting out the main sections first. Okay, so I have the main section, column 1, column 2, and of course I'm going to put down here the footer, which is at the bottom. Now this extra div here will come in play, and I'm going to actually just go ahead and delete this right now, and we'll make a change. Now what we have to do here, because the main section is grouping columns 1 and columns 2 together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this closing div tag that I copied and pasted over. I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to paste it right after the column 1 and column 2. This main section here is grouping these 2 together. So when you look at your wireframe or anything like, let's see here, where did I put that? Oh, right here. When I have a wireframe, I have something side by side. You're going to create a container that holds the 2 columns. So if you do a 3-column look, you're going to have one main container and then 3 sub-containers inside that. So you have to look, and if you find yourself looking at something side by side, most likely you're going to have a main section to group it together on that part. Okay, so once we have that in, we got that nicely set up. Now I'm going to go into my column 1 div to create 2 more sub divs, because I want one on top of the other. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to press my enter key a couple times, and again I'm going to say another div ID equals, I want to say sub 1, now all of a sudden everything becomes a little, you're looking at this, there's like a lot of div tags. Well, that's alright, because sometimes you won't have as many, and sometimes you will go in and have a little bit more. And the other aspect of this too, if you're going to be officially using HTML5 tags, instead of when we're grouping things like this, we would actually use a section tag and an article tag instead. But in this case, I really want to get an idea of how div tags work. So what we're doing here is we're kind of grouping things together, especially when we have things on side by side or on top of each other. I'm going to have one div tag that groups that together. So now this column 1 closing div tag encompasses these 2 div tags right here. Okay, now the main section is going to encompass column 1 and column 2, and of course any of the sub divs that we have within column 1. So again, nothing major in this part, but what we're doing is we're setting up our page to be able to house our content, and we do so by grouping it together with div tags. Now once I have these sections in place, then I can start adding content to our sections. So like in our header, most likely we're going to have a title of our page or our company. So in here, I'm just going to press my enter key a couple times just to get an empty space between the opening and closing div tag, and I have to click inside the opening and closing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a heading. I'm going to start off with an H1 tag, and I'm going to type in the name of the company. And I always have to close it with the H1 tag, of course. If you don't, then any content followed afterwards will automatically be applied that heading 1 tag. Now if I save this real quick and I run this, let's take a look at it real quick. All you have is a heading. It comes up as black text and it has some bold applied to it. Okay. Now I'm going to come down into my second column. I'm going to add a paragraph of text. To add a paragraph of text, we start with the P tag, and we always have a closing P tag. Eventually we'll get into that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this some text over, and I'm going to put the closing P tag in. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding paragraphs of text to my page. Now if you want to add, for example, subheadings, then what I'm going to do here, instead of using H1, because I'm using H1 in my header, I'm going to use an H2 tag here, and I'm going to type in the phrase I want. Now typically we do not apply a heading 1 or a heading 2 to a paragraph of text. We only apply it to a phrase. And I got to make sure I put the closing H2 tag in. If I don't, it won't work. Now let's add just one more paragraph here. So I'm going to add a paragraph tag here. /P. Oops, make sure it's lowercase there. Make sure when you write your tags you keep them lowercase. It's easier to find the information. So let's run this real quick. As you can see here, it's pretty much plain on that part. It just has a heading, a subheading, and a couple paragraphs of text. Now what's really nice is we can start applying inline elements, which means that you're going to apply formatting to certain words or phrases within a paragraph. A couple of inline elements you can use is strong tag, the end tag. Like here on May 2nd, I want this to stand out. So what I'm going to type in is the word strong tag right here, and then I'm going to put the closing strong tag in. Got to put the /strong, and then what that does is it will format. Let me open that up, reload. It formats this text to be in bold. This is called an inline text or inline style element because it doesn't add any blank space above or below the tag itself. A paragraph and heading is called a block element. What that does is it puts extra space above and below. And you can see with the paragraph tag, right above our season here, there's a blank space. There's also a blank space after the paragraph. So it creates that illusion that you press your return key. So that space is automatically inherent into those tags. That's why it's called a block. Inline stays inside the paragraph and doesn't create any extra spacing. So that's, we can go in and we can just bold and add the italics if we wanted to. If we want to add italics, I would use the M tag. So I'd come up here and say M, like that. Now, a lot of people will go in and bold their headings as their H1, H2. Nope, no need to, because headings automatically bolded. So don't be adding strong up here where it says H2 because it's already bold. Can't make something bolder on that part. Now there's ways you can do it with CSS, but you just can't use the strong on that aspect. So again, we're just adding some content in, and of course, as you see here, it's not perfect yet because eventually I want my layout stylized. I want it to format so it looks like this. So right now it's just plain old text, no green, no format, and so forth. So got a few, there's always step-by-step process. So what we're trying to do is get your structure set up perfectly in the first place, and that's what we're doing with these div tags. Now in our nav section, lastly, I want to put a couple links in for our nav section. Okay, so now when I do this, I'm going to be setting this up a little bit differently once I go down the road, because I want to use what we call a definition or a list to create this. So, but right now what I want to do is I'm just going to put in some anchor tags that's going to control the links for what I have. And so what I'm going to do with the anchor tag, I'm just going to put in the A tag, and then its attribute that we need to work with is href equals, and then what it's going to do is you're going to put in the page name. And then you type in the link text that you want to make it into a link. So when I click on home, it will take me to index.html. So here I'm just going to do an A tag again, closing A tag, and then I start all over again, another A tag. And I'm going to say href equals about.html. Little hint, when you name your pages, don't include spaces. Keep them all lowercase, because depending on what web server you upload to, it is case sensitive. Now these pages are not created yet, and we'll eventually create those, but I'm just putting placeholders in. Okay, once I have the links open, let me just go ahead and save this real quick, and let's launch this in Firefox just to see what it looks like. Here's my links. Now we have to do some styling to this to get it to what we want, but as you see here, home, about, products. Now if I click on any of these links, it's not going to work. That's because I don't have those pages saved in the same folder. So if I really want to check it out, I can do a file save as, and in the same folder I'm going to just do index.html, and then I'll do a file save as and name it about.html. Okay. Now when I click on home, it takes me to the index. I can see my address changed right here. If I click on about, it changes the address right there as well. So both pages have to be saved in the same folder for the link to work based on the way we have it set up on that aspect. So again, what we're trying to do here is just adding some content into our documents and setting up our div tags so we can house that information. So one of the things, again, as you're working with this, keep in mind eventually what we're going to do is we're going to be adding some color. We're going to add some styles to this to control the width and height of each section, but right now I'm more concerned about setting up our basic structure and our div tags to house the information we're going to have. So in this case, what you want to do, just to practice, is to go in, add some content, to your pages that you're working with. So down here I'm going to put in another heading down here in my footer section, H3. So all I'm doing is I'm adding some content in, just trying to get it ready so I can start formatting it as I move into my other videos and working with that. Now keep in mind, as you're working with this, if you want to add a little color and so forth to see how it is, go ahead, you can add some color. But again, keep in mind we're going to make some adjustments in my other videos to give you a better understanding of what to do. So in this case, we want a basic structure set up and we want some content to add it. So if you're working along and if you're in one of my classes and you're doing assignment in HTML, we're going to add more things as we move into the next weeks. So add some content. If you don't know how to add, if you don't know what to make up some content. In this case, we want some text to be added. Okay, if you want tons of images on your homepage, well, we want some text. So make sure you add some text, and we want some, a good amount of paragraphs with some content onto it. So from that standpoint, we're getting ahead of, going on, and we'll have some other videos posted that will help you out as well.